don't politicians answer questions?
I don't know. It's so much easier just to answer the question and get it done. But of course, in elections, everyone wants to make the points that the parties want to have reiterated in front of the electorate. But I think when politicians don't answer questions directly, the public stop listening.
I hope you're going to answer some of our questions then. Where is Rishi Sunak? Maybe we've got you out here, we've got Richard Holden. Where's the Prime Minister? Surely he needs to answer these questions.
Well, the Prime Minister's been out campaigning and he will answer questions. He's been doing interviews. We'll do lots as we get to the manifesto. We're sort of in the phony war of the general election, aren't we? The period before the parties bring out their manifestos. And everyone's scrambling around to say, what shall we talk about in the meantime?
But there is something to talk about in the meantime. Everyone is still talking about his decision to miss the end of D-Day. Wouldn't it be easier?
No, everyone's not talking about that. The media are talking about it. Let me tell you.
So do you think it doesn't matter? But
out in the country, people are still talking about the issues that matter most to them. And what I'm very worried about, one of the reasons I wanted to come on here tonight, was to say the real issue around defence is not around D-Day celebrations. It's around the fact that Vladimir Putin this week is threatening to give ballistic missiles to some of our country's enemies. The fact that Ukraine was firing into Russia today. We are in a national security crisis. We need to talk about the big issues in this election. We need to focus on the fact that we are in a crisis and we are still the government, and we need to be giving clear messages, not just to our own country, but to our allies. These are the serious issues. This is not a cartoon election. It's a real dangerous world we live in, and the public want us to deal with the real issues.
I completely agree that what you're talking about is important, but are you then saying that you think this isn't serious, that the Prime Minister missed the end of D-Day? I mean, would you have done that?
I think he apologised, he said it was wrong. Let's get over it. People make misjudgments. They make judgments during campaigns and they make judgments other times. Let's talk about in defence, what really matters. D-Day was talking about the security of Europe. There is a threat to the security of Europe today.
Optics as well, about being in the photo.
If you think that that's the most important thing at the present time, I think the most important thing is keeping our country safe. I think the most important thing is showing a strong line from NATO. I think the most important thing is that the G7 leaders this week talk about what is a security crisis that's really happening. You know, we've really got that. One of the reasons that voters are not listening in this election is that we're not talking about the big issues. It's who said what, who did what, rather than focusing on the dangers in the world. And ordinary people can see what is happening across Europe. The European elections today, what is Putin doing? Let's focus on what matters, because if we focus on the trivia, the public won't be listening.
I just think it's unfair to call this trivia, because it's not just the media. We've seen veterans speak out about it. I've seen behind the scenes plenty of Conservatives absolutely furious about this. And I think one of the big questions that you could clear up, and maybe that would help things move on, is why he missed it. What was it that was in his diary
that meant
that he missed it?
I think it was a misjudgment. I think it was a misjudgment of priorities. End of story. I don't think this is something that we should be focusing on. But don't you think just telling people what it was that was in the diary that was... I said it was a misjudgment. He has said that. He apologised. I mean, how long are we going to go on this one issue when there are genuine security and defence issues facing not just our country? We've got the potential changes tonight in the situation in Gaza. Why are we focusing on this one thing over and over again? It's one of the reasons why viewing figures are going down. It's one of the reasons why the public are switching off. Well, compared to previous elections, yes. OK, fine, we will move on, but I'm not saying this is over for you. Well, it's over for me. It may not be over for you.
OK. You plan to overhaul welfare. That's what you do want to talk about today. It's not the first time the Tories have promised this, is it? Why didn't it work last time?
Well, it's going to be a constant change, isn't it? We've got an evolving picture. I think that most people have not really understood how much the pandemic affected people, economically, psychologically, in particular. And I think that we now need to be looking at the patterns that have evolved in our society since that. There are two big announcements, I think, that matter on that. One was the announcement on introducing some form of national service to get kids out of what's become, in many ways, a ghettoised mindset, get them into wider society, get them to understand the sort of benefits that young people in a constituency like mine would take for granted, and also get more people back into work. Work is not just an economic issue. It's a social, personal, moral issue. If the only value that you know you've got is what the state gives you to do nothing, how do you know what you could have been to yourself, your family, or your community? And what Mel Stride was talking about today was, how do we help people back into the world of work? Not just because it's good economically, but it's good for people.
Okay, so who is it exactly that is receiving benefits now that wouldn't?
Well, we've had a big increase in the non-working population, people not seeking work but who are not economically active. And I think you have to say there are a myriad of reasons why that's happening. Can we identify them? And can we deal with them? And how do we get people back into that world of work? Because leaving people without the sort of interactions you get in the workplace is to leave people isolated. And we've had a big increase in people working from home. We don't really understand yet the social dynamics of that. We do need to think about it.
I want to ask you about something Nigel Farage said. He said that Rishi Sunak didn't understand our history and our culture. He's been accused of emphasising his immigrant heritage. Do you think that that's a fair accusation?
I heard that. I'm very disappointed with Nigel Farage for saying that, and I'm angry about it. I don't think Nigel Farage is in any way a bad man. I know him quite well. But I think that what he said will be interpreted as meaning you have a British Prime Minister appointed by His Majesty who doesn't understand, quote, our culture because he's of Asian heritage. It's disappointing, but it's dangerous. It brings an element into our politics which we should not have in British politics, and I hope that Nigel Farage will reflect on it because I think he's a decent person, and I think he owes the Prime Minister and the country an apology.